Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for being here. So today's session, I am going to present and talk about quality and impact in scientific research. My name is Ayman Akil. I'm heading the professional services team in the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey in Clarivate Analytics. So the agenda for today, first I will be speaking just in a tiny bit about Clarivate, then introducing the idea of quality and then the impact of research, then a bit on research impact, research publications, and then I will end up with an overview of the indicators usually used by different and various stakeholders when it comes to research process, whether we are talking individual researchers or research managers, or why not university leaders and decision makers. So we talk all the time that innovators today, they really face major challenges and opportunity. One of those, only one I'm going to briefly talk about it, is doing really more with less. So we know that researchers are really competing nowadays and the resources are very scarce and limited. Then it's not enough really to publish. You really have to ask yourself about where exactly to publish, what kind of publication, and what kind of impact is expected out of your publications. Let go the meaning of impact, the broader meaning of impact, which I will be briefly touching on it later on. In Clarivate, we are supporting innovators on when it comes to discovery phase, protecting their discovery findings and commercialization. We are partnering with a lot of entities, universities, and stakeholders during this life cycle. So when it comes to research workflow, is it conducting, preparing the research, writing, publishing the research, discovering, assessing, or even funding the research with our services, with our products? We are here to support you as researchers. So to start by the idea of quality, I just want to start saying that the very idea of quality is not something which was invented by researchers or research community. It was really invented by, I would say, or not invented, but excessively used by industry, I would say, not researchers. But researchers had at some point, for a lot of historical reasons, to really borrow this and start inventing their own model of gauging the quality of their research or the impact of research. Then we have the British Standard Institution saying that the totality of features and characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. It's basically going in an open circle without saying anything. What's quality? We don't really know. So we've captured 5 major approaches to define quality: if it's exceptional, if it's consistent, any kind of a process or product, if it does fit for purpose, which is really very dangerous for researchers, because we have to keep in mind that we are researchers. Whatever definition for quality, we have to invent our own definition, actually. Or is it transformative, or is it value for money, VFM? Nowadays, we are seeing research is going towards value for money. So you don't expect me that amount of impact unless you are enabling me or giving me this amount of resources. So it's not an open question. If you give me enough resources, I will give you enough impact, whatever this enough means. Then what's quality? In a nutshell, there's no universal statement of or agreement on what is really quality. The takeaway here is, I think, very simple. There is no standard. There is no universal guideline about quality in research, by the way. So researchers had to invent this I would say, kind of gauge or device in order to capture the quality of their work. I had those couple of slides actually, because if you see my talk is titled by quality and impact, and they are not the same. We all the time say that impact is a proxy of quality. We in Clarivate Analytics, we have invented the impact factor. We started the whole thing of database, of indexing scientific research. And we, the inventors and the founders of the impact factor, we are saying the impact factor is not really enough, I would say, proxy for quality. Let us have a look on this. Those guys got the Nobel Prize in Physics 2014, 2015, 2016. You know, Nobel Prize is not given to a specific work. It's given to a, I would say, career, right? But in this career, scientific career and portfolio, there's one work which is really shiny, which is really causing the noise, capturing the attention of the research community, and why not getting the guy, he or she, the Nobel Prize. If you go to this guy who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2014, this was basically the highly cited work which a lot of people think that this is landed for him the Nobel Prize. It was published in a Q3 journal in Web of Science. I know you say, okay, you Web of Science guys are very stinged, or I would say very accurate, or very, I would say, over careful of putting the quartiles and the impact factor, etc. But this is the impact determined actually by the citation behavior. So this guy published a work which basically got him the Nobel Prize, and it was published in Q3. So Q3 is somehow some indirectly proxy of the impact. It's Q3, right? It's not Q1 or Q2. But the guy won the Nobel Prize. 2015, same story, Q3. 2016, same story, Q4. So, of course, this is a special case. I ran the analysis myself. So there's a good correlation between the distribution of quartiles and the quality, whatever definition. If you stick to the definition of quality by Nobel Prize and you run the analysis, you will find no, most of them, they are published in Q1, some of them Q2. Q3, Q4, it's really hard to capture something. I managed to capture something. So here we have quality, but we have also impact, because Q3 is impact as well, right? So we have quality, and we have, relatively speaking, unmatching impact. The takeaway here, they don't all the time go together, right? We really have to think deeply about the impact of our research and the quality of our research. They are different. I'm not providing the answer in this talk. I'm just saying they are different. If you think about the research quality assessment overall, I've seen, in the literature overall, that we can really attack or approach this idea from different angles. We can start by looking at the research process quality. So the very research process, we look at the quality assessment of this process. Second angle is research, the publication itself. We can look at the publication itself and say something about the quality of our research. We can, we publish something, we've done research, it has some impact, we look at the impact of the research. So we are not looking at the research, we are looking at the impact of the research, which is not the same actually. And we can say, I'm not going to look at the impact of the research, I'm going to ask a panel, experts. Because you see, until now, we've gone really a long way in the scientific research. Until now, we cannot free ourselves from the peer review thing, right? From the panels. We cannot actually, I would say, we cannot rely entirely on indicators. We really need to see and hear people speaking, peers and experts speaking about research. Finally, we can judge somehow do some kind of judgment about the impact and the quality of research using simply bibliometric indicator. It's never enough, but it's needed, definitely. So I'm not going to cover everything now, just speaking a bit about research impact assessment. So now we've done the research, let's look at the impact of our research. So we have the OECD saying, I quoted this from them actually, the contribution that research makes to the economy, society, environment, or culture. So this is beyond the contribution to the very academic research. This is impact. So we need to see the impact of your research going beyond the borders of your university or research center or department or whatsoever. So nowadays, many research impact assessment frameworks are structured around this model. First, input. What's the input which you have? Funding, resources, etc. Now, activities. What kind of activities you are doing? We have to look at this. What's the output? The output here could be a publication, patent, etc. So what's the outcome? Now, if I managed, let's say, to, as a university, I have a patent. This patent is an output. An outcome would be actually, if I manage to commercialize this patent, then this is an outcome. This is an indirect thing happening. Now, what's the impact? Now, the impact is somehow an outcome, but it's indirectly happening. What does this mean? It means that if let's say, the society overall benefited from my research without me affecting this directly. Because after all, we are consuming the taxpayer money, right? The state's money. We have to benefit the society. This is the impact. Now, the first three stages, those are controlled, planned to a large extent by us, by researchers, by the collaborators and organizations. We are good at those. The problem with our old methodologies to capture and measure the impact and the quality of research, that we stick to them. We just see what kind of inputs. I've enabled you with this amount of money. I enabled you with this kind of resources, equipments, infrastructure, etc. You've done those activities, and this is the output. This amount of publications, this amount of patents, etc. But now, we have to invent a model which can capture the impact of my research beyond the output. For example, the outcome, which is, as I said, come from the direct influence with intended results. I've given the example of commercialization of patents. This is an outcome, right? Like if I publish a book, this is an output. If I want to put a spin to it, to a, let's say, to a funding organization, I would say dissemination of knowledge, spread the knowledge across the society. This is an outcome. Now the impact is indicators. Sorry, I lost my iPad. Indirect or no influence. The problem nowadays with those models, not the problem, the challenge actually, that we have a lot of examples where most of the impact is coming from the last part, the impact, that one, which is indirect or indirect influence, let me put it like this. Now, if we have a model which can only capture the output, maybe the outcome, and cannot capture the impact, then we are not truly assessing the research. We are not truly allocating the resources. So maybe you are killing some of the projects in your university, in your research center, because you cannot capture the true value bringing to the society. And maybe it's happening the other way around. We in Clarivate, we have some teams actually working and partnering with a lot of universities and research centers and ministries actually in order to devise some models to capture the impact of their research. And the impact, we are talking about the broader impact. Definitely when you are covering the broader impact, you will be covering as well the output, the outcome, and the impact afterwards. Now, research influence along the research impact pathway. So if you are talking impact, definitely we will cover the environmental overall impact, social impact, economic impact, cultural impact. I've seen a lot of examples, a lot of countries. Definitely people will bring about now, let's say if you are in Saudi, you have to look at the 2030 vision. If you have in another country, maybe they have some kind of a strategy and national priorities, you have to bring it here. Because how could you capture the impact of your research if you are not looking at it, whether it's aligned or not aligned with some kind of a national priority or national strategy or so? Now, this is hard or soft impact. Definitely soft, it means indirect impact. Now, there's a model, definitely we did not invent it in Clarivate, but we excessively use it, which is the three-part impact mapping approach. It's a framework that can be used to map research impact to display complex interaction in a snapshot. It means that if I am looking at a university research overall, and I need to assess, university or research center, the impact of the research. First, I need to understand the context of the research, the ecosystem of the research, what happened, why you are doing this research. This is extremely important. Second, I have to capture the impact pathway. The impact pathway, let me go 2 slides, previous slides. This is basically the impact pathway. I am looking at the research at a university. I need to capture the input, the activities, the output, the outcome, and the impact as well. This is what we call the impact pathway, as you've seen there. So any kind, this 3-part impact mapping approach, we need this in order to capture the true impact of research. So first, understand the context. Second, impact pathway. Third, the soft impact. Soft impact, it means that the broader indirect impact. I will give an example to this. This is the context mapping first, stage 1, because you see the 3-part impact mapping approach, we have 3 stages. Stage 1 is the context mapping, which is a case study on river research conducted in 2011 in Australia. So here, without going through details, I think we are short in time, but you can see the context strip. You have the environmental setting, social, cultural setting, policy, institutional setting, economic settings. All of those are the contextual things. Then you can actually look at the research. You can go year by year and see what is the context of my research at each stage. You can see each one of those. For example, that the context here is first and second national state of the environment reports release. Why this is important? Because sometimes you see, okay, I've done 2 projects. I am allocating the same amount of money to the 2 projects. Which one of them I should prioritize? If they are, let's say, in theory, generating the same impact, same quality, let me put it like this. So which one I should really prioritize? So now it's extremely important to look at the context. In which stage I am? What are my my priorities nowadays? This is the context, basically. This is another one. It's somehow federal government, nature, heritage trust, etc. This is regarding to some kind of funding which constitutes the context in this case. Let me go to the second part, which is the research impact pathway. You see, those are the impact pathway, the input, activities, output, outcomes, impact. really without going into details. Anything which is bold, this is international. Anything which is light, this is domestic. For example, this is an input, Land and Water Australia funding received. This is the same project, by the way. This is done on a river in Australia, okay? This is Land and Water Australia funding received. Now, let's go to an activities, river style framework developed. You can see a output, you can see an outcome, you can see an impact here. Of course, whenever it's bold, it's international. Whenever it's light, it's domestic impact. I didn't want to make you actually bored now. I want to say that capturing the impact of research in a country or university or research center, it's not really straightforward. We have to be super comprehensive if we want to be smart about spending our money or allocating researchers. It's not counting the citations, definitely. It's not keeping an eye on the impact factor. It's being smart, comprehensive, broad. With such models, you can really capture and measure the impact of your research, and why not, you can demonstrate the spending and the allocation of resources on projects based on something which is really capable of capturing, I would say, the true impact of your research projects. Now, going to the soft impact, I wouldn't spend time on this, but basically you have to capture the environmental impact, social impact, economic impact. Now you will be covering cultural impact, policy, societal, environmental, etc. Now you really have to, you really have to spend time on capturing all those, I would say, dimensions of your impact. This is not a straightforward thing. This is not I would say, 1-0 binary thing. It's complicated, but it's totally doable, and it's fun to do because the results will be totally rewarding, because you will have a better understanding of the impact of your research. Going to the quality assessment of your research publications. Now we will shift towards something which is a bit technical. I still really like it a lot. So, sorry, there's something working here. So the very peer review process, so you have to prepare your manuscript, submit manuscript, initial review, send to peer review, review completed. You will get accepted, rejected. Most of the time, never the case. It's most of the time revision, and then accepted, rejected, and then appeal, and then appeal. Okay? This is a process we all know, right? Now, the stakeholders in this model, which is peer review, are three guys, actually. Researchers doing the work, finding the research topic, editors actually overseeing the whole thing, the communication between the peer reviewers and the researchers, and the referees or reviewers. They are actually the experts. They will be the judges, and they will give of course, their intake on the content of the publications. Now, why research scholars should be doing reviews and should be reviewers? It's their duty, actually. You've learned you have to give away to the society, research community. It's to keep yourself up to date. You cannot believe how many researchers use this way to be up to date with their fields, because if I am a reviewer in this niche, I would say, in technology or science, then I am up to date because I'm reading publications, just actually submitted manuscripts. Then it will stimulate seeing something new. It might stimulate some new ideas and designs in your head. For the future career, you could just drift and find yourself in a journal editorial board. Why not? It's to advance your learning and learn more from new things. It's for your current career, because nowadays a lot of universities are assessing the performance of researchers one of the dimensions is to see if they are peer reviewers or not, actually. So advantages, I mean, of course, you have the open type where the reviewers, they know the names of the authors and the other way around. Disadvantage, definitely, it would be the reviewers will be a bit shy or will try to avoid to say actually something really clear if they have some kind of negative attitude towards the publication or so. You have the single blind where the reviewer, he or she does know the authors but not the other way around. The good thing that they can say whatever they want freely. The bad thing that if they manage to capture something and they can publish it by themselves, this would be a bad situation. It happened a couple of times. Double-blinded, most of the time this is happening, although it does not work all the time. Now we have something new, actually. This is why I inserted this slide, the dynamic. Now, all of us publishing, they are publishing actually online. You are seeing researchers publishing online platforms, and you have researchers like a Facebook of researchers, right? Going and putting their comments and tweeting the figures inside research articles because you have really targeted audience there. So this is somehow a dynamic peer review. I myself, with a lot of researchers and professionals in the research community, they truly believe that this is the future of peer review. It will not be static as this is the case now. No, you will have the research articles. There should be some kind of filtering, definitely, but then you will have the feedback coming from all over the world, researchers in your field commenting on this and comparing articles and research findings. This will be, I think, the future of the whole process. So people are also criticizing the very process of the peer review, although it's still needed, actually. First, there's no evidence. Some of them, they say there's no clear evidence that really peer review helps to boost the quality of research. They said no evidence for this. Errors. There's a fun, actually, experiment done there. I've read something that some people, scholars actually, wanted to test the peer review process. So they've sent an article and they, in purpose, inserted 8 errors, okay? 8 errors in this article, and they've sent it to around 220 peer reviewer. Of course, the peer reviewer didn't know that this was a test for them. And they asked them to review the article. Do you know how many error, in average, each peer review managed to capture, on average? Can I have some guessing? Sorry? Out of 8, 5? You are optimistic. Who said 2? It's 2, actually. I mean, it's 2, so it's 25%. So, I mean, the editor-in-chief would say, I could have done it myself. Why bother, right? It's not really effective. I mean, of course, it's an isolated activity, but it tells something. Conferences, usually the peer review process is very challenging there because there are fees and you know the process. Peer review process is not very good at detecting plagiarism for obvious reasons. Limit creativity, this is something important, especially when it comes to social sciences. Because what is creativity, actually? So creativity is just going outside the box, is pushing the boundaries, right? This is creativity. So who is defining the boundaries? Who is the orthodox? They are the scholars. So if I have new ideas, especially I would say not only, but especially in social sciences and the humanities, if I have new ideas, innovative ideas, if they are new, then they are pushing the boundaries, right? Knocking on the doors, trying to open something new, right? But of those scholars, they would resist it because they have defined the guidelines. They are the guys who really know the stuff. Then they have to guard it. Then they will resist this. Then it was found in a couple of studies that really peer review process can limit the creativity. And not only social sciences, also in sciences as well. Now, of course, limited resources. We know how much time journals spend to allocate right reviewers. But now there's something important to say, that this is the challenges, and this is the criticism. But until now, the research community did not find a workaround for this process. We need the peer review. We really need it to look at our work and do their judgment. With the limitations, we acknowledge this, we acknowledge the challenges, we can have workaround solutions to those, but the limitations are there. Definitely the delay, we have all suffered of this. Now, a template for scientific publications. I'm sure that you are all researchers. I'm not really going to spend too much time on this, right? This is a typical article. I'm sure that the template could be customized, but this is just an arbitrary one. The abstract, the introduction, methods, results and discussions, figures, conclusions, references. For whom are these guidelines intended? Of course, reverse engineering. Those are the editors and reviewers and feedback. If you look at this, the editors themselves, when they look at an article, they look at the scope of the article. Of course, you know that in most cases, the article would come back to you saying, okay, this is rejected, out of scope. It's not really out of scope. It's somehow this guy, he or she doesn't want to give a clear reason or whatsoever, right? But out of scope is something really serious. The editors look at this. Innovation is not enough fairly innovative. It's not important. Consistent is fine, it should be consistent, right? But why we are talking now about innovation importance? Like 30 years ago, and there is a study was done, it was easier to get published, right? If you have the result, then get published. But now it's very competitive just to get published. You have a lot of researchers working in a lot of research areas. Definitely we have new research areas, but relatively speaking, there's more pressure on journals. Then you really have to be innovative. You really have to be tackling on important and significant topics, definitely. Now, the title actually, a study was done and 72 of respondents, they were researchers actually, said they could usually judge whether an article will be of interest to them based on the title and the author. If they count me, I would say I joined this group as well. The title is fairly enough. So people, when they go through articles, if you read the article, then maybe you can jump into the abstract, maybe. Most of the time, I say, okay, title is fairly enough. If it did not capture my attention, if it's not of interest of me, then I will go to the other one. There's no enough time. So the title, we can share this presentation with you, but I will not spend too much time speaking about this. It should be really clear, concise, visibility. What's visibility here? What do you think? Keywords. We search by keywords. So people, they shine on the databases, they shine on Google, they shine on the Web of Science, keywords. So include keywords that capture the attention and that bring visibility to you, right? It's extremely important. Avoid putting the conclusion in your title. I'm sure you know this, right? Abstract. You have to give in two to three sentences the background information. Aim, why you are doing so. What is the approach? What were the results? And what were the conclusions? They don't have to be really very, I would say, detailed, but a fairly, it's abstract, right? You are briefing. Pre-studies, gap in the introduction, definitely. Gap, why we are doing so, why it's important, and avoid to give results there. The method, it's part of the literature, then justify why you are using this method, why you are using this analytical model, and avoid doing any kind of conclusions. You are dealing only with methods here. You can use references definitely. Now, coming to the results and discussion, extremely important for sciences here, the order should flow. We like stories, right? You should tell the audience a story by your publication. So the way you are handling the figures, the way you are displaying the results, this is your story. And it should be some kind of a dramatic, right? Now, it's extremely important to know that this part is not called results. It's not called discussions. It's called results and discussions. It means that the moment you display, you give me a result, please discuss it, right? And the moment, the other way around is true as well. The moment you give me a discussion, please put a result there. This is not the outlook. You are discussing something, right? Where is the result to base on it? So relate all the time. In the abstract or introduction, you said there is a gap. There is a gap, right? In the literature, you want to cover it. Because the journals are having excessive numbers of people applying and they want to actually publish their work, you need to give them some kind of an incentive to publish yours, that my publication will capture the attention of the research community. It will bring you citations, visibility, etc. Why it's important? You put it in the gap, that there's a gap in the scientific literature. Now you have to relate the results with the gap. We know a lot of editors, they really look at this, and reviewers as well. It means that you've asked a couple of questions and you've defined a gap in the research community. And people do remember this. This is the North Pole for them. This is the problem you are trying to solve. Now, if your results are not talking to those gaps, are not coping with them, then please adjust either one of them. They should fit together and they should relate to each other. Summarize, as usual. Avoid doing, I would say, discussions in vacuum without attaching them to results. The figures, tables or figures, definitely I'm confident you can make the decisions. But whatever, if I have some data which could be shown in a figure or a table, I would go definitely to a table, not a figure. I'm just giving you numbers. If it's the same takeaway, I would say. But whenever it's dynamic, you need to show some kind of dynamics, then it's more likely to be placed in a figure. Trends, definitely. Independent parameters, I'm sure you know about it. Uncertainty, people care about this, and reviewers, and be precise, we are dealing with numbers. Now, in the conclusions, actually, reviewers are not expecting anything new in the conclusions, right? Whatever happened, actually our work is done in the results and discussion part. Whether you go to title, abstract, introduction, methods, this is only preliminary work, descriptive work. Our main work is done in the result and discussion. So whatever we think is highly relevant, highly significant work, we can upgrade it, highlight it, and put it, rephrase it definitely in the conclusion part. So general claims we've done, future perspective. We can open something. Editors, they like this, because if you write something like future ideas for future projects, then this will capture attention. Then authors and readers should be more interested in their journals, reading them, because they can get more ideas, etc. Avoid mentioning anything new, definitely. References, background references to put people up to speed with who are new to the field, definitely. Contrary evidence whenever possible, up to date, reliable. I've seen people putting a lot of unindexed citations. Some of the actually journals are running those references, and you really have to put reliable citations for obvious reasons, definitely. Avoid excessive number of self-citations. Now, if you ask, what is self-citation? So self-citation could be done on a personal level, which is easy to capture, right? You should really avoid it unless you have to do it. But also self-citations is done on the journal level. Because, for example, we as Web of Science, we measure the impact factor and a lot of indicators with and without self-citations, right? So some journals, if you are mentioning them or citing a lot of references, excessive number of references from their journal, then this is counted as self-citation. If this self-citation went into some kind of percentage, maybe 10, something like this, the number is not accurate, definitely, this will put them in trouble with us and with a lot of actually databases. So it's not really needed by the journals. Now, last part, bibliometric indicators. This is a map of electricity consumption in Europe in 1507. I will be done in around 10 minutes. Thank you for staying here. So this is the map. This is totally true map, right? And it was 0 all the time, all the way. So this is true, but this is meaningless. It's not important at all. This is not relevant at all, because there were no electricity at that time. What does this mean? I used an indicator which is not relevant, as simple as this, right? The same holds with indicators. If you are using bibliometric indicators, you really have to be careful about using them and efficient, actually. So, 3 categories of assessment. Institutions, they have their own kind of indicators. Whatever in green, we believe that they are mostly relevant, not all the way, mostly relevant to institutions and universities. Of course, citation normalization, I'm sure you know about it. If you are talking about mathematics, citation behavior is a bit slow, the dynamics is different. Maybe an article who managed to get like 5 citations per year is something really important in some fields inside mathematics. While if you are talking medical sciences, some people can get up to 100 citations and it's still okay with them, right? So it's really different. You have really to normalize by the category. So research groups, research centers, they have slightly different number of indicators they should look at. Of course, we put them in a bit light green color. Why? I mean, they are relevant to them. Some of the indicators are really relevant to individual researchers, but not to the university, not to the research centers or so. If you look at the individual researchers, this is a bit interesting for us because it's not only about indicators. There are 3 items we have to look if we are to assess a researcher. A researcher should look at his or her output, his or her profile, his or her scientific environment, if I want to assess a researcher, right? If you look at the output to publications, number, quality of those publications, impact, etc. The value of the output, maybe some researchers are publishing quite good publications, good citations, but the topics are really irrelevant at all. Then the output has no value. Is it innovative? It means does it have some kind of side which could be really innovative and commercialized afterwards? Or it's only good, important, but it's not innovative, it's not original? We have to look at this angle as well, and how much they are participating in conferences and networking with other researchers. The output can be captured fairly enough from those 4 angles, I think. Now, if you look at a researcher profile, second item, a researcher nowadays, we should look at his or her managerial and strategic skills. At the project level, no worries, but managing a research project is some skill we have to learn, and we have to put it in our CV and profiles. People look at this. Research and teaching skills. Managed or did not manage to attract funding. won awards, prizes, societal projects, managed to be a reviewer, successful international collaboration, doctorate committee, industry collaboration, networking ability. All of those things, I would suggest, if I am a researcher, I'm building a good profile. I think I'm building a good profile. For example, I'm applying for a position. I want to put together a CV or biography. I would strongly recommend you mention all the items capturing here. People look at this. It's not about my publication. It's a set, it's a matrix of skills and matrix of indicators, I would say. Now, if I'm working in this lab, then the country and the research quality where I'm working, does it enable me with enough funding? Do I have an access to equipment and documents? Team, supervisor model, is it good enough so that I can generate high quality research? Institutional policies, managerial style, people look at this. If they want to entrust me with a project, research project, they look at my scientific environment overall. Now, just to finish with a researcher, exemplary researcher, we have in the green line, this is a university publications in biochemistry, molecular biology. This is a real example, actually. So you can see from 2010 to 2019, the blue guy here, 13, 21, 10, 13, is the number of publication of this specific researcher. She is a she, actually, in molecular biochemistry, molecular biology. So number of publication, definitely the university will outperform her, right? It's a university. Now, this is the time cited. Definitely it's decreasing because recent publication did not have enough time to collect citations. Now we start speaking seriously. This is the citation impact. You can see the blue one is our author. The green one is the university, and the black one is the word. You can see that starting from 2013, our author, our researcher, is outperforming the average of her university, outperforming the world. Okay? This is something we can run such analysis in order to really see what kind of behavior does the impact of this research, of this researcher having in terms of bibliometric indicator angle. Definitely. We can look at the category normalized citation impact, something really very correlated with the previous slide, starting from 2013. The black one is number one, which is the world average. The researcher is outperforming actually the university, the average university behavior in biochemistry. Again, this is the number of publications in quartile. Most of her publications are in Q1. H index, I'm sure you know about it. So if you have this researcher having 8 publications, we can put the publication and rank them by the amount of citation they managed to capture. So 12, 10, 9, 7, 5. So we are ranking them according to the number of citations. Now, the H index is the number of publications that, let's say N, that managed to capture each one of them N citations. It means in this case, the H index is actually 5, right? Because 5 publications, each single one of them managed to get at least 5 citations, right? If you say 6, then no, this is not true. 5 is the right one here. Now, I mentioned this example because even if you say, I found it, there's a mathematician, his name is Hirsch, I guess, in 2005, actually designed the H index. But still, it's not totally fair. H index has some problem. It's good indicator. It's never one indicator capturing the whole story. You really have to use a matrix, and in addition to the matrix of indicators, you have to look at the other angles we've talked about. We've talked about the research process, the impact, the overall impact, etc. Then many researchers really criticize the H-index for the below reasons: the impact and productivity. Senior H-index, for obvious reasons, prefers senior researchers because they have, the number is more. Definitely, it really varies by field. And time variations, if I stopped publishing while my H-index is 10, it will stay 10. But 10 is my, let's say, impact 10 years ago, but not now. So it cannot really capture the time dynamics here, and it's not definitely dynamic at all. With this, I want to finish my talk. Thanks a lot for staying with me again. Thank you, my dear friend. And I wish you a nice afternoon and see you tomorrow. Definitely, we have time for questions. Please, doctor. Do we have a mic or so?
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Actually, I've got two questions. You have mentioned that self-citation is not preferred or should be avoided. Can you clarify this point? And how about if I cited the previous work that I have done? And would you consider this as a negative to my work? Because, you know, we were told that, you know, it's going to be good for the journal, I mean, for the chief editor to see many citation or studies that have been published in this study. This is to increase the, you know, the impact factor. But what I've understood from you is, I might be wrong, you know, but just need to clarify this, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So, no one can say self-citation is bad or avoided overall. No, we are talking about percentages here, and we are talking about pattern here, and we are talking about research area as well, because there's some niche in research that you really have a selection of, let's say, 10 to 15 researchers working in this very field, then definitely they cannot avoid some kind of self-citation, definitely. Overall, self-citation is a normal citation. Definitely one can do it, but you have to look at how many of your citations are self-citations. On the personal level, is this necessary? Yes or no? It really raises questions, and it's, I would say, the judgment of the editor to do it, not myself. But I would say try to avoid it at certain level. You have to look at this percentage and level. In principle, there's no problem with this, but look at the percentage. On the journal level, some journals, they like it, but nowadays we've seen a lot of journals really asking you, try to avoid as much as possible self-citation on our level, because we and other databases actually capture this. Thank you.
So you mentioned a lot of these kind of frameworks, you mentioned a lot of different analysis. So how much of that is actually accessible to an individual researcher? So for example, when you were talking about assessing impact, it's very easy to do that on a large scale, right?
Yeah.
So how do I mention my impact? And how do I, you know, is there a tool that would, you know, that would be, you know, finely tuned enough for a researcher, or is that too much to ask at this stage? That would be my first question. And my second question is more related to your kind of this idea of the highly cited researcher, right? You kind of mentioned that, and you're standardizing that. So I'm wondering, how can I, you know, retain that kind of a level of impact? Because at this stage, let's say I'm a highly cited researcher, I don't know, it seems to me like a black box. You know, I got an email saying, hey, congratulations, you won. But I don't know how to now keep doing what I'm doing? Was there something that I am focusing that I'm going to think, oh, it was this paper that made a difference, or maybe it had nothing to do with it? So how can I have a privy into this kind of a analytics process?
Thank you, Doctor, for those questions. The first one, I don't think the model, I agree with you that the model is not adequate or convenient to assess a researcher. It is convenient to assess a research project. Now, if it's assessing a research project and I'm doing this research project, then somehow it's assessing my research impact, right? But I also agree with you that doing this on an individual level is really hard. This is something that has to be done on a broader level, university or countries level, right? So that you can capture the impact. As an individual researcher, I would really look at the very few slides, which last slides I shown, so that I make sure I'm really updating and harnessing my skills and have enough skills, I would say, to stay relevant in the research community nowadays. Coming to your interesting second question, actually, first, congrats, you are labeled as highly cited researcher, as understood. Proud of you, thank you. Second, there's a methodology, and in which field you are actually? Yeah, but in which field you are actually active? Nano-engineering. Okay, so there's engineering, you should be good with numbers. I can share with you, actually, I will give you my business card now. And then you write me an email. It's a pleasure, actually, to get to know you. I will share with you the mathematical model and some hints on the methodology so that you can just really understand the methodology behind it. It's a bit like a mathematical model or so. What I want to say that it's great if you are labeled highly cited researcher, then you are really an impactful researcher. You are doing great work. Just keep doing the great work. It's great you understand the methodology that you can, but by doing the very same great work you are doing and even better, you will stay up on the game, actually. Your ideas are the most important resource. I'm sure you can find a workaround on this.
I agree with you, but you know, the thing that I kind of really wanted to get at with the models that you're representing is they all seem to be very linear, right? Very linear, you know, yeah. A, B, C, D, you know, where I would be more interested in something that has a feedback loop. You know, I would think, they shouldn't just go in one direction. I think there should be some type of a, feedback in that framework. So I'm just trying to come up with ways that I myself, maybe on an individual level, could do that for myself, so that I can assess my own work in real time,
I understand. Thank you for your question again. Now, the model I shared, definitely to implement it on an individual level, it's not really efficient at all. Definitely, we both agree on this. Now, if you are talking about those models, they have been implemented by governments at some part of the world in order actually, because they go from the input to the output down to the impact, they do the full circulation, and based on the findings of those actually models, they will put the input again and the funding in research. So they do complete the circle. I did not show all the details here, but they do complete the circle actually on a, I would say, societal level or a big university level. Individual level, I think they are not really effective to be used. I mean, it's ROI, right? To think about the broad impact of your research project and then do individual decisions based on this. It's not effective at all because you will invest a lot of resources to really capture the broad impact of your research.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, is it in your kind of are you planning to develop predictive models? So it's fine that you can, it's Monday morning quarterback, or after the game is finished, everybody's the best player. Oh, I should have passed the ball here. I should have done there. It's easy to make these types of decisions. It's more the models that are more predictive, I think, would be something that would be more interesting. And I think if you have AI in there, you could potentially, highlight especially young scientists, if you see somebody is on the right track, then you push them more, right? Because as a university, who do you support if you have limited resources?
There are, if you are talking about individual performance, then we can talk. If you are talking about, I would say, the research fronts, for example, in which direction is the research going, where are and what are the trends in research publications or research projects nowadays, in which niche of research, definitely we've done a lot of work on this. But the scope of what I was explaining is only to capture the impact. Now going to what you've mentioned, this is really interesting and we've done some work there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ayman, for the interesting talk. This is Muhammad Abul Majdi here from the Center of Excellence in Genomic Medicine Research. You mentioned some of the points about the model that Clarivate trying to develop to assess the impact. Would you be able to give us some highlights about that model? What is it and what it is going to focus on? I'm not sure whether the points that you mentioned will be part of this model or not. I would appreciate it if you give some highlights.
I think this is beyond the scope of this talk. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, for your question, definitely. This is beyond the scope of this talk. What I want to say that we've seen the practice of a lot of universities. Maybe KU is really ahead of the game and innovative in Saudi and in the GCC and in the Arab region. I mean, rankings are showing this and the numbers are showing this. But many universities, they are really using a poor, I would say, assessing model to judge the impact of their research. What we are trying to say that if you need to, because you are putting money, and if you need to capture the impact of the research projects in which you are investing, you want to look beyond the output. You need to look at the output, the outcome, and the societal, environmental, or whatever national priorities impact. So we've done some work outside the MENA region until now. We've done some work in order to help a lot of institutions to capture. They wanted to understand the impact of their research. Because after all, it goes, who is spending the money? It's the money of the public, right? I mean, they want to use it. If we can say, if we can demonstrate that this money is really benefiting the wider public, if we can say that, this is really extremely important, and this is justifying the money spent. Maybe, I mean, I'm open if we can have another, arrange a call or so, in a closer like circle, we can talk about this and we can circulate some ideas there. But thank you for mentioning this.
Thank you, Ayman, for the professional presentation. I will give a simple and direct question. And because you have provided some models of the impact of researcher on the, or the research into the society and whatever. But my question is, what's the impact of the journals and publishers who are focusing in the money, not the science nowadays? What's the impact? How is this perspective is going to affect into these impacts? Because you haven't mentioned this in your talk, and now it's the prices of the publication fees increases, and also some journals is focusing in the money more than the science itself, which is affecting. And in the beginning of your presentation, you provided some example of Nobel Prizes winners who get the prizes in publishing in low quality journals or quartile journals. That's mean so my question is like how you connect this to the impact of the research into what you have mentioned.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Just from my part, I don't really have a direct answer to this. I would say we are the researchers. We are the research community. We can do our own judgment, right? We can look at the journals and see, okay, we can somehow rank them in terms of their quality or impact. You have bibliometric indicators, definitely, but definitely your question went beyond this. If you are speaking about, I mean, to be honest, like, the money is there, right? Although we are working in research, but research is very expensive. We work with researchers, and we are a company, actually. So we also want to make money as well. But I truly believe that there's a way of doing business in research while you can get the money, but you provide a value, a true value for the research community. Now this is, I agree with you, this is not happening all the time, but there's a way of doing this. Being neutral, this is extremely important. And there are, I would say, obvious cases where definitely you would say this is a conflict of interest. You cannot do this or you cannot do that. Definitely there are some cases. And I trust your judgment. You can do this with a lot of companies or so. It's up to you. What I can comment on it, that if you need to assess a journal, how is a journal, I would say, impact in scientific research, I would look at their numbers, about their citations, how many articles they are attracting, what kind of visibility do they have, what kind of attention from the research community they are getting, etc. Those indicators are extremely important. Not enough, but extremely important. Thank you.
So I think we are running out of time. So if we have one question from the female section there. So they are fine. So thank you, Dr. Ayman.
Thank you.
Yeah, we apologize for the delay in this workshop, but you did a great job as usual.
Thanks a lot.
So we reminding you that we're going to start. If you have more questions anyway, Dr. Ayman, you're going to be presented as well in the booth as well tomorrow? Or you are leaving today? You're going to be in the booth tomorrow?
No, I will be tomorrow here. I will be attending.
Great,
here.
great. So if you have any questions, so you can bob up to the booth for
Definitely.
Clarivate.
I will be here, actually.
He's going to be here as well. And to remind you, tomorrow we're going to start our sessions in 9:30, inshallah. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.